Good evening, good evening, good evening. Hello. Welcome everyone, thank you all for coming. It's great to see so many familiar faces, but also many new faces. We, as Jews, we've been wandering from one country to the next for 2,000 years. So with that much shopping around, is it any wonder that we're good at real estate? So we're happy to have you all here. My name is Zach Feldberg. I'm a member of the Shul, and tonight we're launching our Buckhead Jewish Business Network with this event. Very excited to have you all here. This is a group that's meant to bring the community together, entrepreneurs and businessmen and women in a shared interest, not just of business, but also in our Jewish identities, to bring our community together and uplift each other and empower each other and network. Not only that, it's also to focus on our bringing ourselves together on a spiritual level. It says that on the Torah, every letter in the Torah represents a Jew, and that with that, we're also excited to launch the Buckhead Torah Project, which Chabad is going to be launching a project to write a Torah here in the community, which is really exciting. And we hope that you guys will come together and join us in our the business network and in that Torah project. And with that, I'd like to introduce our speakers, Jason Chalif and Josh Alzada, for tonight's event. Thank you.
Hey everybody, thank you all for joining us tonight. Very excited for the inaugural of hopefully many of these events. A lot of you guys have met a lot of new faces tonight. My name is Jason Chalif. I'm a native Atlantan. I've been involved with Chabad of Buckhead for maybe the last 2 years. I'm the founder and managing director of Rise Property Group. We do all asset classes, commercial real estate brokerage across the Atlanta metro, retail, industrial, office, medical. Also partner at Denali Investment Group, and we invest in small bay warehouses throughout the market. I'll let Josh introduce himself. And tonight we've got Jan Saperstein with us. He is a titan in the Atlanta real estate business, Atlanta native, UGA grad, really an incredible self-made entrepreneur story. A lot of the most well-known Atlanta companies, Home Depot, Chick-fil-A, retailers like PetSmart, AT&T, Chase Bank, have used Jan for his services, and he has helped them in their growth. He's also very involved, I think, on board of formerly maybe Temple Sinai and the Epstein School. So very tied in with the Jewish community. We're happy to have him here tonight.
Thanks, Jason. For those that don't know me, my name is Josh Alzada. I run a family office called Delta Properties. We mostly manage retail assets throughout Metro Atlanta. We've had a great history in other asset classes as well, but the focus has always been in retail. I think coming from my dad and my grandfather as natural retailers and loving commerce and activity, even in a time when a lot of folks thought retail was overbuilt and not quite the asset class as attractive as it is today. It's something we always liked, and we know Jan's always liked that. So it's an honor to have him here today. Jan, take it away.
Is this one?
Oh, you got yours. Yeah.
Hello, how are everybody? First, I am honored that you asked me. I'm honored to meet everybody, as many people as I can. It's wonderful, and thank you for coming out. Basically, this is going to be just a conversation.
Yeah.
And I'll do my best to keep it interesting and not mundane, and we'll just have a conversation and see how fortunate we are.
What year did you buy your first shopping center, Jan?
Good question. Let's see, 1980, so 1986 maybe? I think it is 85, 86, something like that, yeah.
Wow, that's before most of
That's
that.
right. That's why I mumbled at the
And
end.
what kind of deal was that?
It was actually a small center in Peachtree Corners. And I didn't have a clue. I just had the will to buy it.
You were, and how long were you trying to buy a shopping center before you were able to actually get your hands on this close? And
Well, that's a good question. And it's not finding the real estate. Maybe let me back up. It's not finding the money, okay? It's finding the real estate. Once you find the real estate, the funds will follow, be it through investor funds or debt, whatever it happens to be. So that to me was I had the urge to purchase the real estate, just couldn't afford to do it, right? Until you finally break the code and understand what value you bring to investors and to to be able to raise funds.
what type of tenants did you have in that deal? Was that similar to what you have today, or was?
No, they're all mom and pops, right?
What made you decide? What made you decide to go into retail as opposed to any other asset class?
It has commonality. Everybody simplistically knows when Chick-fil-A opens or Trader's opens, right? Everybody, you know where a Publix is. To me, it's an easier classification. You see it, you understand it. My wife knows when somebody opens. Restaurants are exciting. So to me, it's more vibrant than the other classification.
So when we discussed this earlier, what is more important to you, the land or the tenant?
It's all the land. Tenants come and go. It's what they do. So interesting story for what it's worth. So and you learn this as time goes on. Obviously, is that the strength of the real estate is. Let me back up. What we want to buy is this. Real estate's scarce. No more is being made. So understanding what to buy, what's attractive for tenants, and dealing from strength, which is our whole mantra. When we look at a shopping center, we look at a property and say, is this property better than we are? Because we'll make a mistake, but does the property deal from strength? Because, again, tenants come and tenants go. As an example, we had, and I shouldn't have sold it, but we owned Sandy Springs Plaza where Trader Joe's is. And at the time, it was a great shopping center. It was one of the first centers built in Metro Atlanta in 1958. And we didn't own it then, obviously. But we purchased it, and I got a call from a broker in Massachusetts who has a client who wants to open their first store there. Okay, met in Las Vegas. It turns out that it was Trader Joe's.
Wow.
And so the Trader Joe's, and we'll get back to the issue. The Trader Joe's real estate guy was telling me how fortunate I am to have them as a tenant. Okay. The thought is, with not insulting him, is the real estate. You're fortunate that you can lease in this property. Okay, it's the real estate. You'll go out of business. Somebody will move in. When the center was built, it was an A&P and a Kroger. They went out. Okay, it's what tenants do. Not be flippant. It's all about the real estate. It's all about investing and trying to buy something that has the scarcity is what we look for.
So the fundamental characteristics for a good criteria for a grocer or strong junior anchors, they can always be replaced. Is that right?
Well, hopefully. Well, if you purchase it correctly.
When it comes to financing, in 1968, I think a lot of things have changed. We've seen quite a few cycles since then. How did it compare acquiring centers back then to today?
We bought a lot of centers when, I think it was the RTC, right? I think that's when it hit the fan. In the late 80s, we started buying a lot of real estate. Banks were over leveraged, so that's how I sort of got going purchasing real estate. So your question was, debt financing today?
Yes.
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on on what you're after. You can go get CMBS, commercial mortgage-backed securities, which are long-term, but you've borrowed money from the devil, or you can get bank financing. There's a lot of different financing alternatives. So it just depends on what you're after. It's there, and obviously, because or if you're not leveraged and trying to borrow, 75 or 80%, and you do something moderate, then you can. Then there'll be a lot of suitors who want the debt.
You've done very well, cycle over cycle, and I think a lot of real estate is just being able to survive to see the next cycle. Can you maybe share a story in an economic downturn of what you had to do to make sure the property had a good return?
I'm gonna give you a core answer. It's what I look for, and this came through years of owning real estate and seeing what these tenants do. The majority of the customer are female, right? That's who makes the world go round in retail. So what we're after is a retailer that's female friendly. Not being sexist, but that's what you're after. So therefore, those are the retailers that can survive, right? And they're smart about what they do. For example, Lowe's and Home Depot drop their shelving heights so female customers can shop, right? I'm gonna ask a question to everybody. I know you guys know the answer, but what's the first thing you see when you walk into a grocery store? What's the very first thing you see when you walk in?
Flowers.
Right, why are there flowers? Right, correct. They're not flowers for me and you, right? So that they're telling you who the customer is. So that sophisticated retailer is what has the strength to be able to navigate through the downside. Does that answer your question? Okay.
As far as a tenant mix, I know you were instrumental in having Chick-fil-A go out of malls and go into freestanding buildings and shopping centers.
Yeah.
And that was what year? Roughly.
19, it's like an old man. 1984, 5, something like
So
that.
what change specifically did you suggest to make that make sense for them?
Well, they realized, and I'll give you a quick story. Chick-fil-A was my first national, they weren't national at the time, but first corporate tenant looking for sites. And you realize that the folks like Chick-fil-A are really, they're not in the restaurant business, they're in the real estate business. They're in McDonald's, they're not in the hamburger business, they're in the real estate business. So when we did the first deal with the Truett Cathy family, is they broke the code of owning the real estate themselves and leasing it back to their entity, right? So it wasn't me as much as that they recognized that they were, they were in the malls, they were clustered with everybody else in the malls, and so coming out, their goal was to buy real estate, which would be owned by the family. So from 1980, the first deal we did was at Briarcliff and North Druid Hills Road. And there was a ground lease, and the lease was $35,000 a year. They made that probably in the first 10 days. Right, that was it. So long story short is that's what happened. So when I left, I started with Charlie Ackerman, who passed away about a couple of years ago. And when I left Charlie, Chick-fil-A came with me just when I started my firm. One day I got a call from the general legal counsel and head of real estate for Chick-fil-A at the time. And he said, hey, look, we were doing a check, a deal. He said, we mailed you a check. Okay, when you get it, call me and whatever, we'll send it back. So I received the check. It was $5,000. So I called him on the phone and said, I got the check. I'm going to mail it back to you. And he said, no, that's from me and Truett to help you start your business. They're unbelievable. So yeah, it's great. So so from that time, from 1986, give or take, forward, some of the wealthiest Georgians are now the Cathy family, right? And it's not because they're selling chicken, but it's the fact that they own the real estate, you know. And that's Ray Kroc at McDonald's. I mean, that's what they do.
Are you seeing that trend continue with other retailers more interested in leaving the mall and going out?
Well, they want to, but it's such a franchise-heavy environment now. And it doesn't make sense to me, but if we have a vacancy, fortunately right now we're occupied, because nothing's been built. Finding debt for ground construction is really difficult. So subsequently, our centers have maintained 95% occupancy. But when we have a vacancy of moderate size, there are restaurants that come out of the woodwork. For whatever reason, I don't get it. The failure rate's 80 or 90%, but they're all over the place, and a lot of them franchises. So they don't have, the ones that we have seen don't have the horsepower. Their focus isn't, their focus is to operate their franchise more than they are to looking for real estate. Because if they are looking at our shopping center to open their restaurant, and if they were looking for real estate to own, we wouldn't cross that.
Where do you see, and you've seen just through so many cycles, the trends in retail real estate? What do you think for the next 3 to 5 years will be the prevailing trends?
It's hard. It's really difficult to do business in Metro Atlanta. Not the procedure of it, just the cost to do business, right? So because of that, you're seeing growth outside Atlanta. Our last acquisitions were in Austell, Georgia, and LaGrange, Georgia, and Hinesville, which is outside of Savannah. Okay, we're looking at another deal in Savannah now. Your point is that I see the growth is exponentially outside the metro area, right? And it's it's these strong retailers see that, and so they want to get in the path of growth. We looked at the center about a month ago in Dahlonega. It's a Publix at the intersection. Was it 400 and Long Branch, whatever it is. You can't see this Publix. You can't see them. It's literally up on the side of a mountain, but the growth is there. So, that's what you're seeing. So to do business in the city, it's really, really tough. Go ahead.
What are the metrics for growth that are most appealing to you?
The metrics for growth.
When you're studying a market to see if it's a good one, whether it's Hinesville, Dahlonega, what kind of growth statistics are you looking for?
In a perfect world, it's a 40-year-old female. She makes $70,000 a year. Okay? Where is she? Simplistically,
Home goods.
huh?
Home goods?
What do you mean home goods?
At the home goods.
At the home goods, right? But that's what you're looking for. So that's the ideal tenant. Office Max, Office Depot would open up in areas where there was very heavy families, female population, and because they were selling product to the family, not the business side of things. So so when you're asking me what we see it, and the retailer sees it. So that's what you want to try and focus on. Am I making sense? I'm just rambling here. Throw something at me if I'm going. Good.
So Jane, it sounds like you're very demographic driven. So that sounds like the criteria a lot of your users are interested in being in line with that demographic. And you said it's a lot more difficult to make money in Metro Atlanta than it used to be. When did you see the shift of Atlanta exploding just to make it so cost prohibitive to be competitive and see a close
I think
to,
we've all seen it. Look at your property taxes here,
right,
the bureaucracy, it's a lot. So the path of least resistance, and you've got more flexibility. The center we bought in Hinesville, or as the locals call it, Hines Vegas, had tax incentives from the municipality. So therefore, that's what sophisticated developers are looking for, and rent, some type of tax offsets, and that's what's driving a lot of them outside the city.
did that tax incentive make the deal for you, or was that kind of a cherry on top?
It has to carry itself without you don't want to buy anything for the you're not buying the tenant and you're not buying the financing. You shouldn't buy the tenant, you shouldn't buy the financing. You're buying the real estate. So in that market, this was the center we purchased called Oakland Square, is a dominant center. And so whether it had the tax incentives or not, it was the right center to buy.
Typically, when you buy these larger centers, is it just capital being recycled amongst the groups you sell from, or do you guys go for distressed assets these days, or are those days over?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Here's the meat of it. When I left, Charlie and Chick-fil-A had done their thing. They hired somebody in-house. They asked if I would go in-house with them. I just couldn't do that. So I started to understand how you solve a problem within a property. That's attractive to an investor, right? If there's a tenant here that's going out of business, we know who should replace them, who should go in there. So that helps raise funds. So finding, again, I'm repeating what I started with. Finding the real estate is a challenge. Finding the money is simplistic. And that's totally opposite of what I thought when I started. It's like, my God, where am I going to come up with the money from, right? A lot of people have a lot of money, and to them it's a burden.
Right.
So, they have to deploy it. You get a return on it. So, we are when we look at these folks have been investing with us for 25 or 30 years, and it's because I like to pride ourselves that we can solve a problem. Because there's going to be a problem somehow, some way. There's going to be some issue with the shopping center, and we put our own funds in as well. So we're, it's basically just an extended family is how we sort of grow in. Right.
Tell me you've been doing this for some time. What is your favorite part about doing this?
It's the chase. It's the cerebral chase, right? Of it's basically, I'm trying to think. It's a Rubik's Cube. You're trying to get everything to line up, right? And it's hard with development. The reason why we moved away from development is because I screwed it up so many times. Frankly, everything has to line up. The financing has to line up. The lender has to line up. Everything, development is just, it takes a long time. It's not our acumen. What was your question?
What's your favorite part about the industry?
The industry. I used to going to ICSC. I don't go there anymore. But it's just it's the cerebral nature of it. Sometimes it becomes a massive pain in the why, but it's if you're interested in ownership, that's where I think that I can be beneficial. Okay. I know when you used to go to the ICSC, the International Conference of Shopping Centers, now they've renamed themselves. We go out to Las Vegas, and there's probably 30,000 or 40,000 people, right? And out of those folks, probably 1/2 of 1% actually own it. Other folks market it, whatever they happen to be, right? So to me, it's sort of having that center of the universe type of thing, not egotistically, but knowing that 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 collection of data, that understanding how this thing will work, and knowing that you have real estate it's better than you are, is to me is what is, and it's also generational. And we all know families who've been doing this for over 100 years, right? So it's generational. So all of that together, you're looking at this property, you're saying, is it dysfunctional? Is it going to be dysfunctional? Or if it's not, how do I solve it? And just try to buy it. I'll give you an example for what it's worth. We bought Parkside Shopping Center. You know where Parkside Shopping Center is? Tuesday morning, right? It's right outside of it's on Roswell Road outside of 285, right? And the center is wholly dysfunctional. It doesn't sit at a traffic light. It runs perpendicular to the road, right? And what's interesting, I think it was interesting at the time, all the debris from I-285 was dumped there. That was a dumping ground, okay? So you've got these methane tubes all over the shopping center. I mean, it's inherently a problem, right? We can sort of fix the shopping center, and what you see now when you drive by, you'll see the result of that. But you can fix the center, but you can't fix the area. I mean, you're in Sandy Springs, right? So it turned out to be a beautiful shopping center. We should not have sold it, but so be it. And that's that. I know I'm rambling here, but I don't know if I answered your question at all.
Absolutely. We didn't rehearse this question.
Oh, here we go.
If you did not find yourself in commercial real estate, what do you think you'd be doing?
No clue. I don't have a clue. I mean, I don't know.
You gotta ask his wife that.
Yeah, that was it. I don't have a clue. Actually, it's fine. I've never thought about that. I swear, I've never thought about that. What else would I do? Because when I got out of school, you probably might have hinted about this. I'm going back in time. My mother worked as a secretary for the chairman of First National Bank in Atlanta, which evolved to be First Atlanta, then First Wachovia. You're going back in time, right? So she made a comment. She made a comment one time. She said something like, 5 or 6 or 7 of the largest depositors in the bank are all these men who own commercial real estate.
Nice.
I said, I think I can do that. And so that's, so I don't know. That's what I always did. I don't really, like to fly fish, but I can't do that professionally. So anyway, I don't know whether it's a very good question. I don't know.
Glad it's worked out.
No, yeah, thank you.
So there's a lot of young people in the industry here tonight. What kind of advice would you give them as they go further in their careers?
People will never remember they never remember the deal. They just remember how you treated them, okay? If you treated them ethically. You said, hey, what was the rent that so-and-so paid 10 years ago? I can't tell you. But you're dealing with honor, and you have repeat investors, you have friends, and realize just be honorable with these people and treat them as if you want to be treated, right? And so that longevity is wonderful. My advice would be just that. Be straight up, be honorable, and you're not a salesperson. You're solving a problem. So that would be my advice.
Excellent.
Yeah. Much as I know.
So you mentioned development a lot, Jan. I know
Yeah.
in the past you guys were active in developing retail, grocery. Is that something you'd rather buy
Yes.
directly right after development? Is that right?
Yeah, I can't. It's too long of a process. When you can look at a property and own it in 60 days, or you go develop something that takes a long time. First, I don't have the patience, but it's just too many things have to come together. It has to be a harmonic convergence of debt in everything, right? And so you're dependent on all those staying together, right? And for development to be, and then you hope it'll work. It's just it's too many. You're dependent on the kindness of too many strangers.
Mm-hmm. So the shopping center space in Atlanta has been relatively small for the deals that you look at, but in the last decade or so, it's grown tremendously. Is that right?
What do you mean by that? What do you mean?
Well, the amount of people buying retail deals in your size in Atlanta, Metro Atlanta, compared to the early 2000s, let's say.
You're saying?
Well, different out-of-state groups, international groups investing in Atlanta, putting a flag in Atlanta,
Yeah.
trying to establish presence.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, there's 10 million and under. There's a lot of players, a lot of mom and pops. Once you start to get into the 20, to 30 to 40 million dollar range, the herd thins out, and so there's a lot more opportunities in that. But when you get into that stratosphere, you're now beholden upon the tenants, right? And some of these tenants are, what a 1,500-pound gorilla, 800-pound gorilla, whatever you want to say, right? So that's the catch-22. But the mom and pops, you can move them around and push them to do different things. When you're up in that range and you're talking to a Hobby Lobby or whoever it happens to be, it's a they've got all these co-tenancy issues which are involved with them now. That's the challenge, So, but I'd rather have that challenge, knowing that these guys are going to stay in business, than a small mom and pop center that the anchor is a restaurant like that.
Do you see those small mom and pop centers with a restaurant anchor per se not having the fundamental strength for a lot of the kind of tenants you work with and the criteria you seek out?
Yeah, they wouldn't go. I mean, you're looking at properties that are small mom and pop that, hypothetically, if you have a liquor store, do you want to be on the breakfast side of the road or the dinner side of the road? Get it? You want to drive it into your office. Do you want a liquor store on that side of the road? No. But you're seeing that where people say, I need the urge to fill the property, at least the property, sometimes is greater than the
what makes sense?
What makes sense, right? Because they need to lease it. I mean, the clock is ticking.
Mm-hmm. Right. Especially some larger centers when they have maybe 20, 30, 40 tenants, a lot of shop spaces, you may run out of categories. You start entertaining some unique users, right?
That's right. We owned one time. We owned the Outlet Mall in Helen, Georgia. Anybody has been to that place? But at the time, so the Outlet Mall in Dawsonville was under construction. Okay, they were starting to lease to fill up, and I knew it was time to unload the Outlet Mall in Helen, Georgia, when one of the prospective tenants wanted to open up a snake museum,
A what?
A snake museum.
Wow.
And I said, I think it's time to move on down the road.
So you sold the center with the snake museum, or you
We let somebody else enjoy the snake museum. Right.
So you saw a negative trajectory with tenant demand?
But things move. People, things move. And so the right time. We owned a center in South Lake Mall one time. It was a challenge, and and knowing the market, knowing when it's the time to sell. Right. I mean, you want to keep the great ones and sell the ones and then take those funds and leverage them into buying more stable properties.
So a flight for quality, increasing the credit worthiness of your portfolio.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right. I mean, yeah.
Would you attribute a lot of would you say less competitive shopping center products to being built in a time where it was a lot less stringent on development costs and there was a lot more available capital for development compared to today? You can't build a shopping center unless you have $45, $50 a square foot rents pre-leased.
Right, but simplistically, okay, you might do it differently, but simplistically, we sort of look at 10% rent to sales. If you're you've got you're paying $100,000 a year in rent, or someone like that, a restaurant wants to go in, a sandwich place, they said, well, here's the rent, it's $40 a foot or $50 a foot. That guy, that sandwich guy's got to do $100,000 a year in rent to make it. To pay rent doesn't make sense. They can't do it. So you're buying a short-term a short-term solution that's going to turn out to be a long-term problem. You can't debt it; it's too expensive. You want these tenants to. I'm not worried about the TJ Maxx's of the world. It's the other guys that you want them to stay in business. That's the gravy, right?
Jan, what is your favorite type of seller to buy a property from?
A family
Explain why.
a family who's inherited it, because usually they show the signs of inherited wealth.
Usually,
I know that's very derogatory, but is that true? I mean, that's what, right. So, you know, when we purchased Sandy, I got a call one day from the family that owns Sandy Springs Plaza. Again, that's where Trader Joe's is. And they wanted to sell it because the original, the Burdette family used to be, before it was Sandy Springs, it was actually called Burdette, Georgia. And another note is that that center, which was built in 1958, some of the tenants, some of the spaces had bathrooms downstairs. They had bathrooms upstairs, they also had bathrooms downstairs. Why do they have bathrooms downstairs? That's where the colors would go. That's how old the shopping center was. Right. So this family, by the time they called, had splintered into like 30-something family members. That's perfect.
Wow, that's the best.
That's perfect. So that's it, right? That ideally, you know, that's what you're trying to purchase.
Makes sense.
But I know, but they're few and far between.
Our favorite brokerage clients are usually dead owners, so
That owner
it has to sell. Yeah,
I know.
we love it.
Right.
Um,
But we're dealing with a property now that the guy literally they have owned this thing for, I don't know, 100, same family for 100 years, something crazy. And they can't, they're scared to make a decision. Because they've owned it for so long. They're emotionally attached to it. Right? So that's a challenge.
so good. Rabbi, how are we doing on time?
A few more minutes.
Very good. Maybe we could open this up. Anybody out here that has questions?
Eric, you've got one, don't you?
I've got a question. First of all, great job to all three of you guys. And so my question to you, Jan, is regarding estate taxes.
Yeah.
That's probably what I focused a lot of my time on, and my attorney, Greg Jacobs, loves me.
It's a good problem to have.
It is, but it's also can wipe out your portfolio if you're not prepared. So I'm just curious, and you don't have to tell me, financially, what are some of the strategies as a real estate guy that you were taking regarding the estate tax? For those who don't know what the estate tax is, currently, if you are 14 million for single, I believe it's around 21 million per married couples. Anything over that, you've got a 45% tax. Now, real estate is very difficult because you just can't liquidate real estate. And I've known a lot of families that weren't prepared, a lot of real estate families that weren't prepared, and they've had to sell their whole portfolio just to pay the death tax.
Can you put it in a revocable trust?
You can put insurance in a revocable trust, but you can only gift up to, I believe, 15 million.
Right.
So-
That's a whole nother chapter and verse. It's not, it's not.
Well, from a
It's
real
not-
estate point of
It's,
view.
yeah, but for this group, I think it's more of a, I'm not deflecting your answer, but I think I don't know if that's of interest to this group. It might be, but, it's another whole chapter and verse, a whole different area. Can we talk?
Yeah, no problem. I just want to know how you're thinking. I don't need any specific.
No, I understand.
Had a couple more questions.
Answer.
How would AI affect real estate business?
That's so funny.
Good question.
On the way over here, I said to Lynn, I hope nobody asks me about AI. Thanks, Dennis.
wait and see, huh?
Yeah, right, I don't know. I mean, I understand bricks and mortar, that I got, that I have, I understand that. So it's, keep it simple, I don't know. Maybe from a brokerage standpoint, it might. But, and at one time they were talking about these virtual cities that you could purchase a virtual block through Meta, right? And then you try to virtually lease that.
Oh, like crypto.
It's way beyond my simple capacity.
Wow.
But yeah, look, it's what's sexy is that it gives you generational income, right? And how do you get to that? That to me was always my interest. It was, how do you own it? Because you look at these families who've owned this stuff for hundreds of years, right? That was always my interest. So, that to me is still the motivator, right? So, I'm not doing it for myself, so.
As far as AI, I'm sure you guys use Placer AI, geofencing.
We don't, the brokers do.
The brokers do, right?
Very
Data
good.
accounts.
Yeah, and what that means is they actually track through your phone how many visits a retailer has, okay? For example, Trader Joe's won't share financials, okay? Or TJ Maxx and all these other firms, they won't share financials. So there's a company out of, I think, Australia that created this Placer, right? And so basically, they'll tell you how many times, how many visits per whatever period that TJ Maxx store has, right? Because you can't see, they won't tell you sales, but you know how many people are going there, and so you can sort of extrapolate what sales would be out of that. So,
It's the new traffic count.
what's that?
It's the new traffic. It's the new traffic
It's a
count.
new traffic count, right? So, so a quick funny story for what it's worth. We're in Las Vegas. I go meet this mystery tenant who turns out to be Trader Joe's. And the guy brings me, and I was unfamiliar with him. And the guy brings me this massive block of chocolate, this huge chocolate block, right? And so I end up the meeting, and we actually did this one up the street. There's wherever we are. There's a Trader's down here too. And there's no story about that one. But so I walked out of the meeting in Las Vegas, and I had the label turned out. The Trader Joe's label. That was not good, because then everybody said, "Hey, what are you doing with that? How'd you get that Trader Joe's massive chocolate bar?" I said, "I don't know. Some of my friend gave it to me. That could have been a real, that's whatever."
Lost them, huh?
Huh?
Could have lost them.
Could have lost him, right? This
Why
Trader,
was that so dangerous for you?
because everybody would sit there and say, is Trader Joe's looking for sites? And if that's the case, then it just becomes, a feeding frenzy. This Trader's down the street, when we, that was I forgot what it was an Office Max, before that was a Regenstein's, I guess. Anyway, so they wanted to, at the time, before Costco, Trader's was the largest wine seller in the country. They were huge. So of course they wanted to open up a wine place here. Problem is, at the time, you had to be within a certain distance from a church, right? So we had to work with the neighborhood and create a new zoning classification. I think it's called neighborhood convenience, that allowed them to put the beer and wine into that store. That's why it's there. But from that, of course, the neighborhood and the churches all took their pound of flesh. So, that's what happens.
Jan, you touched on this a little bit with the Trader Joe's, but one of the things that's most fascinating for me is that in commercial real estate, you can operate with inside information. And unlike a lot of other industries, it is not illegal. Can you maybe give an example of, how you operated with some information, something like the Trader Joe's that nobody else knew?
Just that. You know.
Great story.
Yeah, well, I used to be more involved with the tenants, you know, and understanding that now it's more of the actual operation of the real estate. So, you know, look, information is money, right? So, you know, somebody tells you something in confidence, it's kept in confidence for personal reasons. So, you know. Anyway, does that answer your question?
Absolutely. I think we had another question.
Yes.
Yeah, Jan, I'm just curious, won't get into the estate planning, but, just, you should. They have insurance for that. But on a serious note, I'm curious, with all the properties that you have and the multitude of tenants,
Yeah.
what are you using for software to track all this? What have you found to be helpful to, you know, there's a lot of organization behind it all. And could you speak for a moment or two on the property management side? And that's got to be a vast undertaking. And I'm real curious as to how you facilitate that, as well as track your leases and so forth, if there's special software.
Well, we used to do our own property management, but I'd rather take a knitting pin and jam it in my optic nerve than to continue to do that. So we sold a lot of properties and basically said, I'm out of this. And we now we use Colliers, and they're Colliers, and they're fabulous. They're great. So they maintain that. And so to answer your question, I don't know specifically which property, would you know, Ann? I don't know which software they use, but they basically track that. And we also, my daughter, Hillary Goldberg, is also, she's a CCIM, Certified Commercial Investment Member. She also helps out and she tracks a lot of these renewals, right? So independently of what Colliers does, you know. So
You've enjoyed the transition from
it's the best.
holding someone else responsible for that
100%.
internally.
No, it's great, but
And this is last question.
good.
One more?
Any more questions?
Somebody, Eric, I know you have one.
In
Yes.
the back.
You touched on it a little earlier about, obviously you have a lot of centers that have big box retailers
Yeah,
or
right.
grocery anchored centers. Have you ever been deterred from doing a deal because the co-tenancy issues?
Yes.
Or what were those issues, and speak a little
This
about just owning, rather, you used to probably be in the under $10 million range, but then you went over to these big behemoths who can have you by the ball sometimes. I mean, when is it worth it? When is it not? And are they ever able to negotiate?
A friend of mine who's in the same business as I am moved over to apartments, and he said he can't take dealing with these massive retailers is really difficult, and they all have this cross tendency. So if this guy goes out, this one gets half rent, and on and on. So in a crazy situation, I was somewhat relieved that we were under contract to purchase a center in Pooler, Georgia. You know what Pooler is? You got to say it like you're from the Pooler. So we literally were within 5 days of closing, and the state of Georgia closed down for COVID. The problem was, if we would have gone forward and purchased that shopping center, none of these tenants opened, right? Which means if Hobby Lobby wasn't open for business, which we call Dick's to not be open for business, and it would just daisy chain, we would have lost the center within 30 days. Right. We're dealing with that now. We're dealing with that now with a center that Party City was in there. The leases were purchased by Dollar Tree. Okay. Well, we have restrictions from some of these national retailers that says, hey, do not put in a dollar store. Don't put in specifically Dollar Tree. Okay, but they purchased the lease. So now we're dealing with that. And also some of these prejudices, for example, Goodwill. Goodwill, if you, does anybody here work at Goodwill? Because if you don't, you should. Once you see their financials, you would be saying, I'm in the wrong business. I mean, my gosh, someone gives them the inventory and they sell it. Someone gives you free inventory, okay?
They pay $2
And you sell it.
an hour.
And they pay, right, or bottom line is that if you some of these other retailers don't want a Goodwill, right, for whatever reason. I think they're fine, right? So you're dealing with that. We have a situation now where we have an Office Max. I don't know if anybody's been in Office Max in the last 300 years, but there's nobody there. So we want to put in a Goodwill. Goodwill wants to go there. We have exclusions from all these tenants because they don't want Goodwill. But, Goodwill brings in a ton of tenants, no different than Costco brings them in. So, not tenants, a ton of customers. I'm rambling here.
Is that something you work out on a tenant by tenant basis?
Yeah, it's a lot.
One last question.
Yeah, well, I got a little late, so apologies if I covered it, but I was curious about how, there's articles written about consumer discretionary spending going down, different areas, and how you were kind of thinking about your portfolio and how you would position it as there might be some pullback in consumer spending.
People love, there was this, It was a good question. Yes. There was years ago, Walmart was just devastating towns, right? Walmart would go and put one of the first generation Walmarts in, and it would devastate the town, and then they would put in a larger super Walmart, and they wouldn't sublease the older Walmart, so they basically controlled the town, right? And one of the, I forgot where I read this, but they asked a poll of the residents, would you rather have your downtown vibrant? I'm getting your answer. Would you rather have your downtown vibrant or cheaper prices? What do you think they said? Cheaper prices. So to answer your question, there might be a lack of restraining consumer spending, but these are really sophisticated retailers, and they're going to morph, and that's Dollar General's got 15,000 stores. Not 15,000 stores. Dollar Tree is exploding. So you're seeing these retailers sort of morph into and capture that. And they're not going to the malls anymore. They're not, buying. They're buying inexpensive goods. So that answer your question, sort of. That's the way they can combat it. Anyway, look. Thank you for asking me here, and thank you all for listening to this conversation, and be safe.
Thank you, everybody. Let's give them again a round of applause like we just did. Big shout out to Jan and to Josh and Jason for spearheading this evening tonight. My name is Rabbi Yisrael New. I'm here from the Buckhead Shul, Chabad of Buckhead. It's so wonderful, this is a new initiative, and I'm really thankful and grateful to Josh and Jason for leading this charge, the Buckhead Jewish Business Network. This is the first event that we're doing here, and stay tuned for many more that I know that Jason and Josh have in the works. And I just want to mention that, I had never met Jan before, and we hopped on a Zoom last week, and I wouldn't say I was nervous, but I had never met him, and I know he's a big businessman, and just to see how down to earth and easy to talk to, he was really, really captured me to see that he's a man of the people, and he started from, I don't want to say the bottom because that's not accurate, but he started from just a Yiddish boy, as they say, and he told me a little bit about his roots, and to be able to see where he is today with a beautiful family,
And I'm very grateful that you took the time and the energy to be with us here tonight. So thank you very much, Jan Saperstein.
Thank you.
And everybody can enjoy themselves, hobnob, schmooze a little bit more. Really appreciate you all being here tonight. L'chaim.